I've always thought suburban life was mostly harmless chaos. HOA complaints about trash cans, neighbors arguing over hedge height, someone stealing your Amazon packages while pretending they're doing you a favor, the usual background noise of modern adulthood. I never expected that I would return from a 2-week work trip and find that my entire swimming pool had vanished. Not drained, not vandalized, not partially damaged. Gone. Excavated from the ground as if someone was digging up a time capsule, leaving behind only dirt, broken stones, and my once pristine backyard in ruins. My pool wasn't just a pool. It was 12 years of investment, a saltwater system, imported stone decking, a custom waterfall, underwater LED lighting. Everything cost nearly $50,000 and held memories of my daughter learning to swim, family BBQs, football Sundays, birthdays. It was a sanctuary I built after a difficult divorce, a personal oasis in a world that felt exhausting and unfair. And my neighbor, Martin Halloway, had always hated it. He never said it outright. That's not how men like him operate. Instead, he smiled too much, commented too much about what I could improve in my backyard, subtly comparing my lot and my life to his own oversized modern stucco house, just a few doors down. Every conversation eventually included an offhand remark about value, design, or status. Your lighting's nice, but I would have chosen warmer tones for resale. That coping is interesting. You know, darker stone would have been more modern. Small digs masked as advice. I ignored it because life is exhausting, and pretending nothing is wrong sometimes feels easier. A week before leaving for Chicago, Martin offered to keep an eye on my property while I was gone. At the time it seemed normal, neighborly, even. Now I see it as him volunteering to supervise the theft. The trip itself was miserable, delayed flights, endless meetings, terrible hotel coffee. So by the time I returned around midnight, all I wanted was a shower and sleep. Then I walked through the side gate and froze. There was a gaping crater where my pool had been. Dirt piles, deep tire tracks through the grass, broken stones scattered across the patio, PVC pipes protruding like skeletons. Even the filtration system was gone. My first thought was disbelief, then humor, because your brain sometimes refuses to process reality. Nobody steals a swimming pool. But someone did. I barely slept, trying to rationalize possibilities. Insurance fraud, contractor error, HOA mishap, hallucination. Nothing fit. The next morning, I grabbed coffee and approached Martin's backyard, only to hear music and splashing water. My stomach dropped as I peeked through the fence. There it was, my pool, perfectly reconstructed in his yard. Same mosaic tile pattern, chipped coping, waterfall wall, LEDs cycling underwater. Even the floating pineapple thermometer my daughter bought as a joke. And Martin himself, floating smugly in the middle on an inflatable lounger, sunglasses on, margarita in hand, looked at me and smiled. Calm, confident, smug. I stormed up to his gate yelling, "What the hell is wrong with you? That's my pool." He leaned back, removed his sunglasses slowly, and replied, "Pools kinda look alike, don't they?" Then he hit me with the line that crystallized the audacity of the man. "Can you prove it's yours?" Years earlier, during the pool installation, I'd had the contractor embed a stainless steel identification plate beneath the main drain housing. My initials, installation date, permit number. Martin didn't know about it. Watching him float in my stolen pool, smiling like some suburban pirate king, I realized this wasn't theft. This was ego, obsession, and a complete miscalculation. The second he dared me to prove ownership, I stopped thinking like an angry homeowner and started thinking like someone about to systematically dismantle a man's illusion of invincibility. All right, let's hit pause here because this is where the story turns into something almost educational. And if you own property or live in an HOA, pay attention. According to standard procedure, situations like this aren't automatically criminal, even when a neighbor steals a $45,000 pool. From a legal perspective, permanent structures like pools, decks, or landscaping are tricky. Police usually classify disputes like this as civil matters until ownership is indisputable. That's why Vincent thought he could get away with it. No immediate arrest, no quick consequence, just bureaucracy, confusion, and the assumption I'd tire out first. This is a psychological trap. Narcissistic, entitled individuals often rely on social conventions, politeness, and hesitation to create leverage. They calculate that reasonable people won't escalate because confrontation is exhausting, costly, or socially uncomfortable. The lesson here is not just about law, it's about strategy. You can be right, angry, or justified, but unless you document ownership meticulously, understand how human behavior works under social pressure, and act decisively, people like Vincent will exploit hesitation. Contracts, permits, invoices, and even small embedded identifiers, like the metal plate in my pool drain, become your most powerful weapons. This is why, in situations involving property, ego, and entitlement, preparation and leverage often outweigh brute emotion. Knowing the rules, anticipating the psychology, and acting strategically is how you prevent someone from thinking they can violate your trust with impunity. The first thing I did after confronting Martin was call the police, mostly because some tiny remaining piece of optimism in me still believed reality worked the way normal people think it should. Neighbor steals pool, police arrest neighbor, story ends. Instead, 2 officers showed up, stared at the giant crater in my backyard, then stared over the fence at Martin floating around in my pool like a retired Bond villain on vacation, and both of them looked genuinely confused. One officer actually said, "Sir, I've never seen anything like this before," which honestly wasn't reassuring. I showed them permits, invoices, old backyard photos, property surveys, everything I could pull up on my phone. Martin walked outside in loafers and a tucked-in polo shirt, looking disturbingly relaxed for a man currently committing luxury-level suburban theft. Then he started talking, calm voice, measured tone, fake concern, explaining how he had recently acquired salvaged materials through industry contacts and legally rebuilt a similar pool while I was away. Similar. That word again. He even laughed lightly and told the officers, "I think Nate's just emotional because the designs are close." Emotional. I swear, manipulative people always weaponize that word when facts start cornering them. According to standard procedure, the officers told me they couldn't immediately classify the situation as criminal theft because permanent structures like pools fall into complicated property territory. Civil court, insurance claims, documentation review, bureaucratic purgatory. Exactly the kind of exhausting process Martin had been counting on. He assumed I'd burn out emotionally before consequences ever reached him. But anger only helps for about 10 minutes. After that, strategy matters more. So instead of screaming louder, I started building a case carefully and methodically. First call, the original pool contractor. Luckily, the owner still had archived files from the installation 13 years earlier. Permits, engineering plans, invoices, serial numbers for the filtration system, and confirmation of the hidden stainless steel identification plate beneath the main drain housing. That plate became everything. Second call, a private investigator named Claire Moreno, a former insurance fraud analyst who took one look at the situation and literally laughed before saying, "Your neighbor's either the dumbest narcissist alive or the most confident." Turns out he was both. Claire documented everything. Drone footage of Martin's backyard, contractor vehicles entering his property, timestamps of construction activity, material deliveries, surveillance footage from nearby intersections. And here's the funny thing about rich suburban people trying to commit elaborate crimes. They always underestimate how many people talk. Contractors gossip constantly. One subcontractor admitted Martin had been obsessed with my backyard for years. Apparently, he complained constantly during HOA gatherings that my property set an unrealistic social benchmark for the neighborhood. That's the most insecure sentence I've ever heard in my life. He hated that neighbors complimented my backyard during parties. Hated that people gathered at my house for football weekends. Hated that despite earning more money than me, he couldn't manufacture the same atmosphere or attention. This is a psychological trap narcissistic people fall into all the time. They confuse admiration with ownership. Instead of building happiness for themselves, they become obsessed with controlling the appearance of success. And eventually obsession turns into entitlement. Martin genuinely believed he deserved my pool more than I did because, in his mind, he represented higher status. Claire uncovered text messages between Martin and contractors discussing how to transfer and modernize the structure while I was away. They had dismantled portions carefully, transported stonework overnight, rerouted plumbing, even altered landscaping to make it appear original. Honestly, The operation was so absurdly organized it almost became impressive in a deeply criminal way. But Martin made one fatal mistake: ego. Ego always creates sloppiness eventually. Because while he covered most visual evidence, he overlooked the identification plate beneath the drain. And once we had clear footage of that plate, the story changed completely. From a legal perspective, undeniable ownership evidence transformed this from a confusing civil dispute into a very ugly liability nightmare for him. But I wasn't finished yet. See, Martin's entire identity revolved around reputation. Country club memberships, HOA influence, luxury clients, social image. The guy practically survived on admiration like it was oxygen. So instead of fighting only through the courts, I attacked the thing narcissists protect most fiercely: public perception. Claire helped me compile a complete evidence package: photos, permits, contractor testimony, time-stamped surveillance footage, side-by-side comparisons, and high-resolution images of the identification plate. Then I sent everything to Martin's largest business client, a luxury hotel chain that used his company for high-end outdoor installations. No emotional rant, no threats, just facts, professionally organized. 48 hours later, his company lost a multi-million-dollar contract. Suddenly, Mr. Margarita started looking nervous. Then came local news. And let me tell you something. Local news stations absolutely love bizarre suburban crime stories. Missing package theft? Maybe. Lawn dispute? Sure. But neighbor steals entire swimming pool. That's ratings gold. Reporters showed up with cameras, drones, interviews, graphics. The whole thing exploded online almost instantly. Drone footage of my empty crater compared to Martin lounging in the reconstructed pool became internet fuel overnight. People started calling him the pool pirate. Someone edited movie posters titled Ocean's Subdivision. Another meme showed him dressed like a pirate captain steering a floating flamingo through my backyard. HOA Facebook groups lost their minds. Retired boomers who normally argued over mailbox paint suddenly transformed into full-time internet detectives. And Martin completely unraveled. He started threatening neighbors with lawsuits, yelling at reporters from his driveway, accusing people of harassment. Every attempt to regain control just made him look guiltier and more unstable. Then the dominoes started falling fast. 3 additional clients terminated contracts with his company. The HOA quietly removed him from the architectural review board. His country club suspended his membership pending investigation, which in wealthy suburban language basically means social execution. And then his wife left. Apparently, she originally believed Martin had legally purchased a similar design. Once the evidence went public, she packed up their kids and moved into her sister's house across town. That's when the arrogance disappeared completely. One evening, Martin showed up at my front door looking exhausted, pale, and 10 years older. No sunglasses, no smug smile, no performance, just fear. "We can settle this privately," he said quietly. And for the first time since this insanity started, I realized he finally understood what consequences felt like. From a legal perspective, he was cornered now. The district attorney had opened a criminal investigation after mounting public pressure and contractor cooperation. Property destruction charges became possible because of excavation damage. Fraud concerns emerged. Insurance investigators became involved. The walls were closing in from every direction. So we negotiated. Martin agreed to pay $70,000 total, full restoration costs, landscaping repairs, underground plumbing damage, legal fees, emotional distress compensation, everything. Most importantly, he had to fully fund and supervise the pool's reinstallation under independent contractor oversight. And honestly, watching the process was one of the strangest experiences of my life. I sat in my backyard drinking iced tea while crews dismantled the exact same waterfall wall, LED systems, stone coping, and filtration equipment Martin had spent weeks pretending belonged to him. At one point, he just stood silently near the trucks while workers loaded sections piece by piece. No arrogance left. No sarcasm. Just a man watching his ego collapse in physical form. During excavation, they discovered his contractors had damaged my primary water line during the original removal process, which added another $15,000 in repairs he also had to cover. Karma sends invoices eventually. 3 weeks later, the pool was back where it belonged. The lights reflected across the water exactly the way they used to. Except now security cameras monitored every corner of the property, because apparently that's something I genuinely need after surviving organized suburban pool theft. Martin's house went up for sale a month later. His career never fully recovered. Most neighbors avoid eye contact when his name comes up. And honestly, the craziest part isn't that someone stole my pool. It's that one man's envy became so powerful, so obsessive, he convinced himself he had the right to physically take another person's happiness home with him. Turns out happiness doesn't transfer ownership quite that easily. So here's the thing. This story sounds absurd, almost cartoonish, right? A grown man steals a $45,000 pool, gets dubbed the pool pirate by the internet, and loses everything: career, reputation, marriage, social standing. But underneath the ridiculousness, there's a lot to unpack about human behavior, entitlement, and the consequences of violating boundaries. The lesson here is bigger than just a backyard pool. People like Martin don't just act out of need. They act out of envy, obsession, and entitlement. He didn't need the pool. He wanted what it represented: status, attention, admiration, a sense of power he felt was his by right. This is a psychological trap we see all the time. Narcissists exploit politeness, patience, and hesitation, betting that people won't escalate because confrontation is exhausting. Most people do, which is why he assumed he could get away with it. From a legal perspective, disputes over permanent structures are tricky. Ownership must be clearly documented. Permits, contractor records, invoices, and even hidden identifiers, like my stainless steel plate beneath the pool drain, become crucial evidence. According to standard procedure, police and courts move slowly, and emotions rarely matter as much as documentation does. The lesson here is also personal. Being calm doesn't equal weakness. Patience and strategy often win over anger. Martin underestimated me because I wasn't confrontational before. He confused reason for passivity, politeness for powerlessness. Understanding human behavior, preparing evidence, leveraging social and professional networks, and sometimes using public exposure responsibly can protect you and enforce accountability where bureaucracy alone fails. At the end of the day, the pool is back, security cameras in place, neighborhood gossip at a maximum, and Martin's life is a cautionary tale of envy gone unchecked. I've realized that boundaries, preparation, and the courage to act strategically are more important than pure anger or immediate retaliation. So now I turn it over to you. If a neighbor did something this outrageous, would you fight back the way I did, or would you walk away to preserve your peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if this story blew your mind even a little, and subscribe, because apparently suburban life can be wilder than any reality show you've ever watched.